you have to really get that in. And there's some areas that you have to intervene.
Yeah.
Sometimes very gently and sometimes very quickly, but that helped out tremendously. Just
staying on top of that.
Every section of the area and then getting feedback from every person that had anything at risk, every company, getting feedback from everybody constantly.
All right. Welcome back to Expandable. Good morning.
Morning.
So you just went through kind of a big transition in your bank where you guys switched over core banking services.
Yeah.
And so that was a big thing you had to plan, probably you've been planning this for a couple of years, try to get to this date and then walking through it.
Yeah,
now you're kind of on the other
process.
side of it. So I thought we could talk about that this morning because it's such a big undertaking to take your team through that. You have I think like most businesses, they're running their business, they're doing things, everybody's in their space and they're doing really well. And you've got, ideally you've got good people in the right roles, but then you put this big change in front of everyone and it kind of tests people to say, okay, are you on board to like go with where we're going or, so I thought we could talk about that a little bit this morning and just kind of like, what are the major things that came out of that you would recommend for anyone going through a big change in their company?
So, a lot of times when you're going through a big change, depending on what, if you're already a long-standing business, you've been around 5-10 years,
right?
Probably people have kind of gotten, maybe set in their ways, but consistent. They're getting comfortable. And so, in banking, they're working already at a very high capacity. You don't want to work them, everybody at 100%. You need to have room for people off, but you're already working at a relatively high capacity. Now, when you're changing things, you're going to have to learn it. You got to learn it ahead of time.
On top of your work.
While doing your work. And then there's a switchover. And then you've got to maintain customer continuity throughout that. So, there's a lot of planning and testing and things that you've got to do really up front, but it is, it covers everybody. Yeah.
And well, it's a stress test of what your team is really worth, the value of your team, because you're right. You don't want them at 100% max day to day.
No, you can't,
because then people are going to get burnt out. But assuming you're running that 80-90% and then you add another 50%, it's really going to stress people.
It does.
So you have to be ready for that.
And depending on where you're at, one thing that really you've got to look at project management. Now, project management, depending on the scale of the project you are in a large business. I mean, some people looking at this and are like, no, I'm going to do it myself. And that's great. But then when you've got scale where you've got, especially with a bank where it could benefit, where you've got hundreds, thousands of users, potential impact and ongoing in their customers and their livelihood and their businesses. Ongoing, most businesses usually don't have it to that degree. Yeah.
What I wanted to say there is that the fact that all these thousands of customers, what you're doing is such a big undertaking because you're not only putting strain on your employees, but you're putting strain on your customers.
Like you've got to have continued continuity for them. It's not like you can have a production and like, okay, we're going to shut down this week. We're going to delay and not send our product that is not as needed. Okay, people can delay. Are they stocked up ahead of time?
Right. Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
No.
I think most businesses, unless a new management comes in and says we're changing everything, most businesses don't have to go through what you just went through at the level that you went through it. No. So I think that just kind of paint it with that brush.
And you've got to take inventory too of your staff is going to be responsible for different areas, and then you have to have overarching people that know how every department's intertwined and connections are intertwined. Yeah. So you really need a lead. You need project management. And so we definitely, we sought for some outside project management. Okay. Yeah. And that was extremely beneficial because during the time while my staff is either learning and going through process and our current procedures, because you're having to change everything afterwards. You're trying to do everything up front, but until you switch.
That's right. I think that was really smart to look for outside perspective because, just to the nature of everyone already being taxed and having to learn stuff and then walk through it. it's going to be really hard for an inside person to manage the team well. You know, you really need someone from the outside has walked through this before and can say, okay, I'm the guide. Because, here we go.
You know, businesses don't do that overhaul, every 5, 7, 10 years,
probably
20 years,
never
years.
For a lot of businesses.
You know, unless you've had a lot of new staff that just came from that happen, you're not going to typically have a lot of staff to do that. And, you know, typically, you know, a lot of things is once people start going on a new program, new software, you know, a lot of it is kind of like, you know, updates to Microsoft. Okay, things are slightly different. You have the basis. And so once they get used to it, they start going, but they get the nerves up front.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I saw that you did that I thought was really, really important was communication. You stayed on top of communication to the point of us putting together an internal newsletter for the staff, which is really great because what you did from my perspective is you utilized a strain on them as an opportunity to communicate even more thoroughly with your staff for that purpose, to say, okay, we want to keep everybody in lockstep. I'm going to produce some videos and call people out on all the good work they're doing and everything to keep morale up. But now there's continuity to that afterwards. You can say, look, we're here. We're more.
And that enables to look back on things too, because when you're having a transition, there's so many important things that you do, and some things that you've went through in the beginning, you already agreed upon. So you put that to bed, you know, comes back later on that you agreed. Oh yeah. We agreed that we're getting that module, or that's the process that we're going to go with.
Right.
You know, and it's over a 2-year process. So, you know, you've got to come back. And so what was important 2 months ago, we may have gotten through and it's not important now.
Yeah.
And some do resurface. So it's constantly, you know, leading back and bringing it.
Yeah, no, I thought that was a big piece of it. And I think even if you're not going through a big change, being in more communication with your employees, your staff, your team is only going to help you because, you know, through the nature of what you did with that newsletter is you always had that in there was, hey, let us know how we can improve.
I got a lot of positive feedback.
Yeah.
And what was really good during that time is so many of the employees just like excelled in different areas and took on and, you know, just came to super, you know, and
where I think the nervousness from the owner of saying, we're going through this big change. It could be like, well, I want to lose some good people. You know, I don't know what's going to happen. There's an anxiety there.
There is.
There's also the side where you don't know how people are going to excel when people do. So give
also
people the
kind
credit
of like in the banking industry, because,
you
know, finding people that, okay, we're going to have this giant change, you know, there's going to be a 6-month period of, you're learning a lot while you're working. Now new ways, you know, and because the work is not done when you switch over. You still go back and, you know, you validate things early on, but you go back and revalidate. Like there's never enough. You always second guess and you always continue back and validate.
Yeah. One thing that surprised me actually, and I'm ashamed to say that I didn't think of this on the beginning, on the front end, was the fact that you guys did such a great job with your customers that they started leaving 5-star reviews on Google.
That was amazing. And the first 2 days we got more.
Yeah. And so it surprised me, I think, because, you know, just to the nature of this conversation, you're nervous about a big change. You know it's going to disrupt people's lives. No one likes that disruption, especially with their money. No. And so I am thinking, well, we're going to have a lot of complaints, which we already knew that's probably, you're going to have some complaints.
Absolutely.
But I did not expect to get multiple of them on multiple 5-star reviews, not warranted.
No.
Not like we were like on a campaign, which made me retrospectively say, why did we not think of this? Because this would have been a great thing.
I know. You know? And what thinks is, you know, the customers that are like the first days that are either re-logging in and rechecking it out, those are the ones that a lot of times you never see because they're up to date.
Yeah.
You know, on their financials that they're going through. And so the fact that, you know, we had a live people there, you know, being able to help them. That was great.
Yeah. Just, you know, personal stories from the trenches. My, so my two, we have an account here, but my two older son and daughter have accounts here. And so, whenever it came through the transition went through and she got the emails, she they don't know that
did they?
Part of that. And she brings me the email and she's like, it looks like they're doing something, whatever. And I just acted like, okay, well, let's see what happened. And she's like, okay, I guess I have to do this thing. So she got online to do it and she couldn't figure it out. I was like, well, you should call them, because if you call them, you probably get an answer right away. And she did in like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes later, or whenever I came back in the house, she's like, I was like, well, did you fix the thing? She's like, oh yeah, it was easy. I'm back in now. And so then my son, who's not as, how should we say, type A.
Okay.
She's more type A. First of all, he went and spent a bunch of money out of his account he shouldn't have spent.
Okay.
And he knew, because he just got, he wasn't ready. He wanted to go eat lunch and he wanted to go to the thrift store and do all these things.
Yeah.
And so he knew in his mind, I'm spending this money down. That's not good. Until finally the card declined. Completely different kids, right? The card declines and he's like,
that's how he knew he didn't have the money.
Yeah. And he's like, all right, well, now I got to do something. And then he goes, I was like, well, listen, what you need to do is get on your account, look at all your expenses, and let's sit down and see what you spent so we can make this right. And so he gets on there and he's like, well, now I can't get in my account. And I see the different, right?
Yep.
And I was like, well, that's probably because you didn't check your email. First of all, you don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And you need to probably get this fixed. So days go on. And so then he's like, well, I don't have any money. I want to go to the thrift store. I was like, well, you spent all your money, first of all. He's like, when I can't get to my account. I was like, whose problem is that? And so we go back and forth.
Funny.
We go back and forth. With my daughter, I said, you probably should just call him. She calls him fixed. And he's all like, well, yeah, but I was like, listen, on Monday when they're open, call them. No. They'll fix it. And then you can move on.
That's funny. My daughter had it open right away.
Yeah.
And then I was mentioning my wife was logging in, checking it. So everybody was like, no, do it on your own. Let me know any of the pain points so we can start letting other people know.
Yep.
I had them log on the day before, as soon as we got tested, validate, send off. And so they went through re-enrollment. Simple. So I'm like, oh, great.
But I think there's a lesson to learn here now that I'm thinking through this. Well, obviously for your business, right? Because that's what we're talking about is the banking customer, right? We're broad strokes here, but if you look at my son, you look at my daughter, okay? Those are two different customers.
Well, you're going to, and you're
think about how they're using your service. One is saying, I'm going to go and swipe my card till it declines and I'm going to blame it on you. And then the other one's saying,
but that is,
I'm going to keep up with my stuff. That
is the sphere, and that continues on to adulthood.
That's what I'm saying.
But you're correcting that behavior on him that you.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. You got two different customers there in how they look at. So I guess really it's a mark back on the bank to say, since you got all these great 5-star reviews, you got a lot of good customers. Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, because not everybody will on their own volition give a 5-star review.
And then the 1-star review, we can't even validate they even have an account.
Yeah. Usually they're spam.
And it's been closed for a long time. And so we're like,
but I think there's a bridge to everyone else who's listening, because everyone's got a customer base and everyone has at least the 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
And you have to remember that when you're going through a big change, your customer, if it's customer facing or even employee facing, how they operate in their life is going to dictate what they require from you.
It does.
So if they're not necessarily type A, but if they got their stuff together and then the change comes and they're like, oh, okay, we'll navigate the change and then we move on with my life.
Now, some of the type A's, it was very, I called them ahead of time because you had to, switch it off. So there was times, several days over the weekend where they couldn't log in and view their account.
Yeah.
So the ones that I knew that like the first thing they wanted to do, they know, listen, our money's here.
Yeah.
And so I called them ahead of time.
Yeah. Well,
here's what to expect.
I think that the big thing that we're sort of underscoring here is the fact that when you're a small bank, community bank, you're saying you're all about the community, you're saying you're all about customer service being the difference. How you really know is when you go through a change like this and everyone starts to say, to the point where people are putting 5-star reviews, because people don't just go do that. They're saying, look, if you don't bank with Surety, you should go bank with Surety, because they take care of the people. Like when I got the call, when I got them on the phone, they did this and they walked me through like I was a real person. And that's what you're trying to do on the marketing side. You're trying to open people's eyes to awareness to the after effect, the impact. But people don't really know until they go through it.
They don't.
You're not going to get that with a bigger bank.
No. And I want to go back to one, I mean, and in general too, not even just banking, think around, you're not even going to deal with that with major companies that are ran by faceless private equity firms.
Yeah,
So
right.
Started on that tangent.
Yeah.
So they're going to treat you completely different as well too.
Yeah, they're a calculator.
One thing I wanted to get back to the project management step on it. You know, there's no way I'm the expert in every field of banking. I know enough of every section that I know when somebody doesn't know what they're doing. So things that I would do that really benefited me was I would listen in to so many earlier on calls that were areas that I knew nothing about, but I could definitely hear the cadence of, you know, my staff and maybe if they had frustrations to deal with, because there's so many personalities that are involved, and especially with software. Yeah. And, you know, we've got our set of personalities, you know, for the most part, our employees are working together in an office section and but now, you know, they're dealing with people that they're remote. I mean, they've been working from home for years and different, and, you know,
you mean from a project management standpoint? Yeah.
Yeah. And different coders are different things. And so, you know, you have to really get that in, and there's some areas that you have to intervene. Yeah. You know, sometimes very gently and sometimes you know, very quickly, but that helped out tremendously. Just
staying on top of that
every section of the area and then getting feedback from every person that had anything, you know, at risk, every company, getting feedback from everybody constantly.
Yep.
That was really good. But you've got to be able to be in there and listen to the arguments, because, you know, some people, it's the first time in a situation in a project management and having to be creative and think. And, you know, sometimes it may come off rude or not rude and they don't know. And so
they're not used to the way of thinking or working in that, you know, being managed in a project setting versus the day to day.
Correct. Yeah. And so, you know, identifying that too and having conversations, I think is really big, because it is a change for them. So you got to, you know, focus them on, okay, this person has that task. So to get the most out of them. Yeah. So, and that's trying to like, all right, we need to get the most out of them. So what's the quickest way? If we think that person, you know, so that was extremely beneficial.
Yeah. 100%. This has been good. I think there's a lot of value for people to learn there. And if you're listening to this and you are about to walk through something or you're in the middle of something,
I would love to hear how, you know, manufacturing company has to, you know, replace all of their equipment, you know,
or even more so, there's a material that their main product's made from, and they need to switch vendors on who makes that material or widget or whatever. I mean, that's a uproot of your core product. But you know, those changes sometimes have to be made.
Absolutely.
So, all right, on to the next one.